Can you hear me?
Julia, are we fine to go? Good evening, everybody.
Sorry, yes.
Thank you. Good evening, everybody, and welcome to tonight's Cabinet meeting. I am Councillor Ken Rattigan. I'm the leader of the Council and Chair of Cabinet. And I'd like to welcome everybody to the meeting tonight, being held virtually in accordance with the Council's rules for virtual meetings, which reflects the Government's published guidelines and regulations. The meeting is being streamed live on YouTube. It will also be available to view after the meeting has finished. Councillors are reminded that although this meeting is being held remotely, they're regarded as being present in the meeting of this Council, and they should observe the normal rules of behaviour under the Member Code of Conduct and not allow members of their household to distract them during the course of the meeting. Can members now ensure that their mobile phones are now switched off or on silent? Members of the Cabinet will turn their video link on during the meeting and keep their microphones muted unless they have been invited to speak by myself as Chair. Members are reminded that they will switch off their video link or move away from the camera. They will be treated as leaving the meeting and will not be able to take part or vote on any item under discussion. Members can indicate their wish to speak by raising their hand and should only speak when I as Chair invite them to do so. The officers present will only switch on their video link where they wish to be invited to speak by me as Chair. As Chair, I will confirm the name of any visiting speaker at the appropriate time in the agenda, who will address the committee by audio link. Councillors should declare that they are leaving the meeting and switch off their video link if they have a disclosable pecuniary interest or other personal interests on an item on the agenda. Councillors can switch off their video link when I call the next, switch on their video link when I call the next agenda item. Voting will be taken on a roll call, and I will confirm the recommendations proposed to the committee before voting begins. Can each member indicate whether they are for or against the recommendation, or whether they wish to abstain? Hopefully we'll not have any IT problems, but can I remind councillors that if their connection is lost, they should immediately advise the Democratic Support Officer and use their meeting link to access the meeting again. Thank you for listening to that. I might now move to the agenda. Do we have any apologies for absence? I've not been notified of any. Thank you very much. Declarations of interest. Councillor Bound.
Thank you, Leader. I'll be turning off my camera as I have a non-pecuniary interest as patron of one of the applicants for item 7.
Thank you for advising us of that. Anyone else? No? If you lower your hand, then thank you, Simon. I've not been notified of any urgent items for our agenda tonight. And now move to agenda item 4, which is the minutes of the meeting held on the 9th of February this year. Do we all regard them as a true and correct for their accuracy? Perfect. Thank you very much. That is great, and that will be moved. Now we move to the more substantial part of tonight's agenda with item 5, which is the supported living initiative at 180 Culver Road, Basingstoke. I'm going to get the portfolio holder to say something after all of our speakers have made their interaction with us, as the portfolio holder might like to round up some of the points raised by by the individuals. Firstly, I'd like to call forward Mr. Orchard. Mr. Orchard, are you with us?
Mr. Orchard's coming by phone. He is there.
Okay.
Unmute.
Okay, well, hopefully he hears me and he'll just take his phone off mute. Mr. Orchard, are you with us now? If Mr. Orchard can't make it, then I would call Councillor Kim Taylor to do her 4 minutes, and then we'll go back to Mr. Orchard if that would be acceptable to you, Cabinet. Okay, right. I'd like to call forward Councillor Kim Taylor. Councillor Taylor, are you with us? Julia, I see your hand raised.
Yeah, sorry, Chair. I was just checking with you that the portfolio holder was going to introduce the report before the public speakers.
I think it'd be better if he answers some of the questions raised by the speakers, and then he can cover those off in his forward or comments to it. I think that's what I'd prefer, if that's okay.
Okay.
Thank you. Mr. Orchard or Councillor Kim Taylor? I'm sorry, the pause there.
Oh, good evening, Leader. I'm just making sure that we can get the IT working. I was just giving an opportunity for the member of the public to get a chance to get in. Thanks very much for the opportunity to speak on this. This is a really difficult sort of subject and area, I think, for a lot of people. I mean, clearly we want to do a great deal to help people who are homeless, particularly people who've been street homeless for a long time and need to make that transition into having their own home, and that is a really important thing indeed. But I think there are some concerns that I do have about this particular programme. The first is that it's very, in a sense, opportunist, because I think that unless this particular property had come up, we wouldn't necessarily have sought it out. If we were doing this with a clean sheet of paper and saying, we need to do something, where would we put this? What would we do? What kind of building would we have? It may not have been this particular place. So I think there is a degree of, we're really lucky something has come up and we're going for it. But my main concern at the moment is about consultation with local residents. People are entitled to be heard, and it is a job of us as councillors to hear residents and to make sure that they have a proper opportunity to do that. And I've had some contact with residents in the area, I'm sure other councillors have as well, where they are raising a concern that their voices are not necessarily being heard. And I have to say that, you know, this is a big 18-page report and there's less than one paragraph on consultation with residents. That, I think, is pretty poor, and mostly that paragraph, I think it's paragraph 17 if you're looking for it, Leader, just really mentions in passing that Two Saints have attempted to contact people and they will talk to people if they've got any objections, and at some point our officers will talk to people, and at the moment it looks like it's a bit mixed in terms of reaction. There's a suggestion that our officers will be talking to residents more later on, but I'm just wondering if we shouldn't be doing that now. You know, it's not much, is it? One paragraph to acknowledge that there's a mixed view in terms of consulting with residents. I mean, there's residents, there's local businesses nearby, there's a school nearby. None of those are mentioned as having been consulting, and you're not really getting a picture of those views. Those views are not being presented to you. And I just feel, therefore, that this is a little bit previous, as it were, to be making this decision, to deciding on the covenant, to be, you know, rushing forward with this at this moment, when actually what we could be doing is we could be asking officers to actually conduct those conversations with residents and to provide, and local schools and local businesses, and to provide a fuller report on the engagement with residents. Because at the moment, what we don't know is we don't know whether or not they are being properly consulted with. I know it's very difficult because of COVID, but nonetheless, at the moment, they do not feel that they are being heard, that anybody is giving them a voice, and that anything they say is just basically, you know, rolled over. And they don't feel at the moment that their current elected officials are actually representing them or being prepared to represent them. So I'm really just asking you to say that we ought to be going, as a council, we should be doing our job, going out and consulting, hearing the voice of residents, and that should be fully explored and put in this report before a decision is made.
Thank you for that, Councillor Taylor. Have we got Mr. Orchard available? No? Well, I'll move, while Dem Services is trying to locate Mr. Orchard, I'll move now to Councillor McCormick, who'd like to make a few comments towards this agenda item. Councillor McCormick.
Hello.
Hello, we can hear you.
I think we've got Mr. Orchard now.
Oh, that's Mr. Orchard, is it? Mr. Orchard.
I'm sorry about that. There was trouble with my phone.
No, and thank you very much for persisting with it. We'll be delighted to hear you for a couple of minutes, but we won't be too stingy on the time if you run over. So, Mr. Orchard, over to you.
Right. I have read the council's report, Supported Living Initiative, and the Two Saints brochure. Both of them make everything sound perfect. But has the council not realised that virtually all those who live locally are totally opposed to this proposal? Hasn't the council realised that citing this development in Culver Road is inappropriate? Nobody could deny that a hostel is necessary. The problem is that Culver Road is the wrong place for it. All my neighbours fear that our lives will be severely disrupted if this proposal goes ahead. There's also folk who live outside the immediate area but walk up the path from Winchester Road with their children on the way to school or to the newly refurbished play area just further up. And there are dog walkers, people walking into town to shop or to work. Two Saints only canvassed the 50 houses nearest the site. That was totally inadequate. Most commonly, there's concern for young children. Picture one or two of them on that path running ahead of their parents. They round the corner and find their way blocked by a group of strangers who are making a commotion and swearing loudly, just like we see it at the top of town. Next time their parents would make a detour, the path becomes a no-go area. My neighbour's house has a bedroom which bridges over the pathway. Back when 180 Culver Road was used by the probation service, teenagers gathered under there for taking drugs. This is bound to happen again. It would also be the ideal spot for drug dealers to meet. Just like Two Saints site in Newbury, we must expect a serious litter problem, noise at night, and maybe some fighting. The character of Culver Road would change dramatically. Without doubt, our sheds, our garages, our cars, possibly our houses too, will be broken into by addicts trying to find items they can sell on. Is it okay for our neighbourhood to be changed in this way? Thank you for listening to me.
Thank you very much. That was very good of you to persist with that. I'd like to call Councillor Andy McCormick forward. Councillor McCormick, are you with us?
Yeah, I just had to manually unmute. Can you hear me now?
Yes, thank you.
Excellent, thank you. Well, much of what I wanted to say has already been said. I would just put a quick advisory out there that as a member of DC committee, I'm not supposed to have an opinion at this, as it may come back before the committee at some point. You heard Mr. Orchard raise a number of concerns, and I've spoken to a few other residents about this issue. And I think some of the concerns that they may raise may be concerns for any councillor who casts their eye over this. It's a compact site. There's a couple of houses in very close proximity, 179 Culver Road and 32 Cordell Road are immediately next door. It's a very quiet, settled estate. It's been up about 50 years. It's a new town build. I went to school near there at St John's and Cranbourne. I know the area well. Quite a few people, my school friends, their families still live there. The sort of concerns that might be had from this is management of some of the external nuisance factors, and we saw some very disturbing news coverage of the Two Saints hostel in Newbury, which would give cause for concern. And I have to say, I think we'd all agree that any prospect of that would be unacceptable in a quiet estate. You know, antisocial behaviour, syringes on footpaths, that sort of thing. Nobody wants that. I do appreciate that May Place is no longer fit for purpose. It's got a single kitchen, it's got high windows, it's in the middle of town centre. The residents who are vulnerable are prone to being picked on in the town centre environment, especially during the night time, because the town centre, being what it is, has more sort of personal crime than just about any other part of the borough. So I would support a new site in principle, absolutely, but is Culver Road really the right one? So I had a list of questions which you may want to answer, or I accept a written answer. The first one is, have any alternative venues been considered? The second one is, what will happen if planning permission is refused? Will May Place close? And if so, what would happen then? The third one is, how will the site be managed? And I think we've got some answers to that in the text of the report, with 2 people on there full time. How will they cope with the mixture of stage 1 and stage 2 residents with varying degrees of vulnerability? And finally, what assurances can the residents of Culver Road and Cordell Road have that there won't be problems with parking, antisocial behaviour, drink and drugs paraphernalia being left in close proximity to the very busy footpath that's used by children of St John's School, Cranbourne School, and Queen Mary's College and Fairfield School? Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor McCormick. I appreciate that very much. I'd like to move now to the portfolio holder, Tristan Robinson, to give some answers to some of the questions that have been raised by our 3 speakers, and to give some context of where we are on this covenant tonight.
Thank you, Leader. If I may, I'll do a brief introduction first, because I think that would be helpful to set the scene. Then I'll respond to the points made by the public speaker and 2 visiting councillors. Helping the most vulnerable people in our borough is a key priority for this administration, and the delivery of a new purpose-built supported living facility at 180 Culver Road will help us achieve our aims of abolishing rough sleeping in Basingstoke and Deane by 2024. Through active collaboration, the council has worked closely with Hampshire County Council and 2 Saints Housing to bring forward this exciting new project, which will make a tangible difference to the life chances of those who are homeless or at risk of homelessness. This paper sets out how the council will use its resources to help provide further purpose-built housing accommodation from the borough's most vulnerable residents, in line with the housing and homelessness strategy. The report tonight is not concerned with any planning permission that may come forward in the coming months for the site. The report before us is purely to approve the revision of the council's covenant at nil value on the property at 180 Culver Road to support the delivery of a supported living scheme as detailed in this report. However, I do understand the concerns that people have raised, and I'm more than happy to respond to those in a moment. I think it's important that we remind ourselves of why we are doing this. We have a housing and homelessness strategy that was approved unanimously in full council at the end of last year. This is about providing the most vulnerable in our society with a safe place, a roof over their head, and access to specialist support, which represents for them a chance for a more secure and brighter future. The fact that the average age of a rough sleeper is more than 30 years younger than the normal life expectancy is unacceptable. And this new facility will help save lives and support vulnerable residents away from sleeping rough on the street towards independent living with 24-hour support. As portfolio holder, I am absolutely committed to not sweeping these challenging issues under the carpet and to work to find solutions rather than finding reasons to delay that which I feel we are morally obligated to deliver. I think if I turn to the comments made by Mr. Orchard first. So thank you very much, Mr. Orchard, for attending. And I do absolutely appreciate that a number of residents have concerns about the proposal. And what I would say is, as portfolio holder, I've been engaging directly with Two Saints. I've been in contact with a number of local residents about the proposals who've raised some concerns with me, and I've been making those concerns known to Two Saints as well as the potential applicant as they come forward, to make sure that we can respond fully to those concerns. And I'm confident that through collaborative working, many of the issues raised by local residents will be addressed when a planning application is submitted in the coming months. I understand that people feel emotionally about this proposal and its impact on their local area. But what I would say is we must not forget that it's really important for the whole community to integrate people into our wider society. We shouldn't be sectioning people off in the community. We've heard already about how May Place is not suitable for what we need anymore, and the need for a new facility is paramount. Councillor Kim Taylor, thank you very much for attending. I would question your use of the word opportunist. We have been working on this scheme, or a scheme of this nature, for over 5 years now. We have considered a number of other sites. Those were both in the town and indeed other wards. This certainly wasn't the first potential scheme available. We looked at least 2 others in the town centre, namely Adelphi House and Key House, and they were not considered suitable, although I'm happy to provide a written answer on why they weren't. You're absolutely right, Councillor Taylor. Consultation with residents, local businesses and schools is very important. And the fact that Two Saints are engaging with the community, I welcome. I have encouraged them to consult further with the community in advance of a planning application being submitted, and I'm confident that that will take place too. I would, however, completely refute Councillor Taylor's suggestion that the local elected representatives for this area are not representing their residents. I can assure her that they are, and that the local members for this ward, Brookvale and Kings Furlong, have been engaging with myself as portfolio holder and the officers in the housing team for over a year on this proposal to make sure that the voices of their residents are heard, and are heard loud and clear. What we are trying to achieve is to deliver a new centre to enable the life chances of the homeless to be increased in our borough, in consideration of local residents, and local ward members have been making that case to us directly for at least the last year. So they are representing their residents. Councillor Mccormick, you say quite rightly that May Place is no longer fit for purpose, and that's why it's so important that we look at this proposal in full. Is here right, and have any alternatives been considered? I think I just mentioned that yes, alternatives have been considered. A number of alternatives have been considered both in the town and in other wards. You asked what will happen if planning is refused. I'm not one for hypotheticals particularly, because I very much hope that planning will be approved on this site. It's certainly the view of the administration that we should be supporting this as a proposal for the future. Clearly, we will need to work through a planning application, and the planning department will look at that in the view of national planning policy guidance and respond to the concerns of residents as part of that. You asked how will the site be managed. I can provide a written answer and some more detail on that in due course, but I can confirm that there is, it's independent living with 24-hour support, so there will certainly be support available on site. You asked about parking and antisocial behaviour as well, and some of the points that I've been picking up on behalf of residents who've spoken directly to me with Two Saints is around how we manage issues such as parking and the potential for antisocial behaviour in the local area, because that's really important to reassure local residents. And I think there's a lot of work that's being done at the moment by Two Saints on designing out through good design and designing out areas which would lend themselves to activities which local residents have raised concerns about is incredibly important too. I think to finish, I would say that we as an administration are absolutely committed to doing all we can by working in collaboration with the Social Inclusion Partnership and others to support our most vulnerable residents, to reduce the number of people on the housing register, to end rough sleeping and deliver a better community for everyone in Basingstoke and Deane. We must not forget that these are the most vulnerable in our society. They deserve our support, they deserve our efforts, and they deserve whatever we can do to make their life chances better. Thank you, Leader.
Thank you, Councillor Robinson. Cabinet, have you got anything else to add to the portfolio holder? Yes, Simon Bound.
Thank you, Leader. I just wanted to thank the portfolio holder and the officers for their response to lots of the inquiries that have been made in this process. Lots of parts of our town have their own issues with antisocial behaviour. Kings Furlong, isn't alone in having some of those issues, and some of those issues around QMC already, whether that be conversations that I have with the principal at the college and what goes on around the boundaries, and just to thank the portfolio and the officers for the response. As the person responsible for community safety, we're not in the game of moving problems about, we're in the game of solving problems. So just to thank the portfolio holder for all of his responses and conversations about what we do to improve the situation for everybody.
Thank you for that. Cabinet colleagues, anything else? Well, I'd just like to very quickly add my words of support for the direction of travel on Culver Road. I think it is very important that we, as you rightly say, Councillor Robinson, do not keep shuffling people from pillar to post. It's very important we give them some life chances by giving them stability. Now, obviously, tonight is just about the covenant. There will be a planning process to go through. In fact, I got a phone call before 6 o'clock tonight from a resident who's lived in Culver Road for 56 years. So she was naturally concerned about antisocial behaviour and what would happen should the facility be given not just this covenant tonight, but planning permission in the future. And I have reassured her that, and to other residents, that their input in that planning process will be welcomed. And I have stressed that I think there is a need for Two Saints Housing to interact more fully, to make sure that people don't just see it on a piece of paper, but understand what's behind these measures. But I also fully appreciate that interaction and communication have not been particularly easy in the last few months. And I hope as we move out of this COVID pandemic and more people are vaccinated and the lockdown eases, that Two Saints, as well as ourselves, will make sure that engagement is much better. So I thank you for tonight. I see your hand raised there, Councillor Robinson. Do you want to say something else before I move to the recommendation?
If I may, Leader, just a couple of points which I've just been advised on. I'd just like to reassure residents that Two Saints have indeed been speaking to the local schools and college, and I know that they've also been holding one-to-ones via Zoom with local residents, which is incredibly helpful as well as part of that wider community consultation piece. And I would just like to highlight an email that I received this afternoon from a local resident of Kings Furlong. So, dear Tristan, I'm writing to give my support for the proposed plans for 180 Culver Road of today's meeting. I've been prompted to do this after having been asked to sign a petition against the plans on the way home from dropping my children at school this morning. While I understand the concerns of the residents who have organised and signed the petition, personally I'm very glad to see that the council is taking the issue of homelessness so seriously. And I thought that might be a helpful thing to raise here tonight at Cabinet, to show how residents do appreciate what we're doing to help the most vulnerable in our borough. Thank you, Leader.
Thank you, Councillor Robinson. So I would like to move now to page 18 of our agenda, which outlines a recommendation to us as Cabinet, endorses the work undertaken by officers to date and the partnership approach taken as set out in the report that you've all seen. It approves the revision of the Council's covenant at nil value on the property 180 Culver Road, Basingstoke, to support the delivery of supported living scheme as detailed in the report, which accords with Section 123 of the Local Government Act of 1972, where any covenant revision which may be less than the best consideration can proceed where social, economic and environmental benefits can be achieved. It delegates the detailed items and terms associated with the revision of the covenant and related documentation and any other supplementary legal or other agreements that may be required to facilitate the delivery of the scheme to the Executive Director of Corporate Services, in consultation with the Executive Director of Resident Services and the Head of Law and Governance. It endorses the proposed next steps and actions as set out in the report to facilitate the completion of the scheme of development for supported living, subject to, and I make this point, the grant of a planning permission. That is what would need to happen before this facility is built and obviously has residents within it. Are we supportive, Cabinet, of that recommendation? We are. Thank you very much indeed. I will now move to item 6 on our agenda, which I'm going to get Councillor Raffel to introduce first, and then we have quite a large list of speakers tonight, 4 members of the public and Councillor Mccormick once again. So Councillor Raffel, can I get you to introduce the adoption of the vision for the land north of Junction 7 of the M3?
Thank you, Leader. The paper sets out that we are asked to note the comments that have been made by the various interested parties and consultees and to adopt the vision for the land north of the M3 at Junction 7. This is a tremendous piece of work that has come from nowhere to somewhere in 6 months, with many different parties, many different consultees, many different residents, all of whom contributing, and to get it all into a relatively short, high-level document has been a tremendous achievement, and I'd like to thank the various officers across different departments of the council for bringing this together. The cooperation that all have shown has been because all of us share the goal, which is that if we can get a hospital, then it is well planned, taking account of the natural environment that surrounds and is currently present in that open countryside, and it is well planned in the way that it supports that hospital. But the hospital is the prize, and it is start and finish, and in the middle of this vision, the hospital. And I don't want anyone to lose sight of that, because without the hospital, we would not have created this document. And it stands and potentially falls on the decision to build that hospital. So I want to make some points clear. This is a high-level document. It is indicative of where various buildings, roads, parking schemes, and employment uses, and strategic gaps and important elements of the natural environment are preserved. It's indicative of where they will be. It naturally has flexibility within it, because as things move forward, some people's interests or the issues that they promote may increase or decrease, and the vision will naturally have to adjust to accommodate that. Clearly, there is going to be a planning process in the middle of this, and when that comes forward, that again may mean that this vision will have to adjust and show elements of flexibility so that the various interests are properly planned for. Not only will it be, is it indicative and flexible, but it should be, all those involved should remember that this is, for us, the best representative at this moment of time of what the different parties and interest groups and those who are passionate about the open countryside have expressed. It is inevitably a compromise on some of those things, and it is inevitably something which those who are involved will contribute to push their different sides as matters progress. But it is, as it were, a snapshot in time that we believe elegantly and fairly distills where we are at the moment. Of course, in itself, it is very much as guidance, very much a document that will show where we have got to and inform members of the public. It is a document that shows that we are acting transparently, so our residents can see what we're seeking to achieve and can, of course, hold us to account on that. But it is in due course anticipated that when we have the local plan update, this document will go forwards and support the creation of a supplementary planning document that will effectively have planning weight for that local plan update in due course. But it won't have that weight currently for obvious reasons. This document, of course, as I said in the section entitled Vision, sets out that it is the hospital that is our priority, but it also goes into some detail about employment uses and some future residential development. At the same time, it goes into depth looking at how the natural environment will be affected by any development in this area. And with the comments that have been made, it's gone into great depth with the comments from the various parish councils, North Waltham and Dummer in particular, who have stressed the importance of the natural environment and how they feel it could be harmed by the development or harms or adversely affects their villages. And this document seeks to express that and reflect it in mitigation and, of course, in limiting the scope of the development that may come forward. The document also attempts to set out where the key areas for potential green corridors and protecting habitats should occur. And this is not fixed. This will move forward, and there will be further representations from various parties moving forward that obviously we as councillors and our successors will work with moving forward. The vision also talks about the important infrastructure that is necessary, whether it be mass rapid transport, whether it be park and ride, whether it be looking at how cycle lanes and cycle superhighways can be introduced into the area, how well Junction 7 as a junction of the M3 functions. It looks at all of that too, as of course it should. So it is a very important document. It seeks to take account of the various consultations that have taken place, and I know that I'm going to hear further representations to that tonight. And Leader, can I say that their comments will be added in as well?
Ken, you're on mute.
Sorry, yeah, I'm trying to not go over Mark there. I'd like to call forward Mr. Ferguson. Are you with us, Mr. Ferguson? I know it's difficult coming on either by phone or...
Yes, I'm here.
Thank you. You have 2 minutes to make your points on Junction 7 vision.
Yeah, thank you. Just got to... Yeah, thank you for your time, Chair. I've just got a few points that I'll try and quickly get through. This is a great document and a lot of work's gone into it, so well done, everyone. I just think there should be some more definition about what a strategic gap is, just as land that we manage has been put forward as a strategic gap, so it'd be good to have some clarification what a strategic gap is. Vision 4 talks about access to green space, E, and then F, green corridor across the M3 if feasible, and more public access in the land we manage. That we do have a track that used to, before the M3 was built, would have gone over the M3. We'd quite happily open that up as a right of way, which would then take people into Dummer. You know, we should be really proud of our sort of the Wayfarers Walk and Jane Austen's heritage. And if this mass rapid transport, we have a stop, you know, people could come down, get off and go on the Wayfarers Walk. And this junction, the walk around Junction 7 really lets the whole walk down, in my mind, from Inkpen to Emsworth. My next point would be Vision 3 talks about protecting local villages and heritage assets, which is great. I just would like to ask the question: what is a village in your mind? How do you define a village? You know, I think there's an affordability problem in our local villages with housing, and my belief is villages should be vibrant and active communities, cricket clubs, shops, bus services, village halls, church, and I'm just concerned for the future of where they might be going. Are they becoming commuter, unaffordable places to, you know, I'll get in trouble for saying this, but I'm just going to say it. So, and if there's a hospital there, wouldn't it be great if some of the frontline workers could actually live in these villages? And my last point just goes about, from your last meeting, maybe it is relevant to this point, just about the agricultural sector, climate change. The borough has a lot of very progressive farmers at the moment, and I think there may be some more engagement with actually what some of the farmers are doing. Chair, your Kingsclear Estates in your ward, for example. Anyway, that's it. Thanks for your time.
Thank you very much for that, and we'll take those points on board. I'd like to call now Stafford Napier. Are you with us? Stafford, are you with us tonight? If not, what we'll do is we'll move on to Julian Jones, who I'm sure will be with us. He wouldn't miss an opportunity to talk to us.
Can you hear me now, Leader?
Yes, is that you, Stafford?
It is indeed.
Okay, Stafford, you have 2 minutes to make your points to the vision.
Okay, there's only one thing. You've already heard the proposal from one of the landowners in Dummer for the route of the Wayfarers Walk to be amended. The Wayfarers Walk from Emsworth to Inkpen Beacon follows an almost entirely rural route, which showcases some of the best of Hampshire's countryside and small settlements. As you've heard, the only blot on this otherwise untrammeled footpath will be as a result of this vision. They will be the developments around Junction 7. Walkers will have to cross a busy motorway junction, pass through extensive warehousing and industrial buildings, a transport interchange, a hospital complex, and a number of large new housing estates. In other words, it will go straight through an urban environment. This can be avoided and the principles of the vision fulfilled by the simple expedient of moving the Wayfarers Walk a short distance westwards, routing it from Dummer Village across the open fields that you've heard about of the proposed strategic gap, under the M3 using the existing bridge at Tower Hill, perhaps with the road greened and closed to traffic, which will coincidentally also provide the added benefit of removing a potential rat run and offering a chance for a wildlife corridor. And then onward across the proposed North Waltham strategic gap to join existing footpaths and quiet lanes through North Waltham and Steventon, taking in the historical sites associated with Jane Austen, which the current route omits. I simply urge the Cabinet to ask officers to work with the parish councils, the landowners, Natural Basingstoke, and with Hampshire highways and rights of way officers to make such a green corridor a reality, with the Wayfarers Walk rerouted at its heart. Thank you very much.
Thank you for that. I appreciate that very much. Julian Jones. Julian, are you with us this evening?
Right, is that okay?
Yes, that's perfect. Thank you.
Okay, I share some of the views, or most of the views of the previous two speakers, so I won't repeat those. The creation of the vision for Junction 7 was precipitated by the planning application for the critical treatment hospital and the current Newlands warehouse. It's been a valuable exercise since neither development was considered in Basingstoke's adopted local plan. The critical treatment hospital application has expired, and the warehouse proposal has been opposed by many bodies, including the leader of Hampshire County Council, who considered it would risk undermining the integrity of the wider local plan provisions and credibility, as well as wider local economic growth objectives. The vision document you're considering this evening has been developed in a very short timescale without sufficient consideration for the wider context and needs of the borough. There should have been more opportunity for review of the amendments, and bodies should have been consulted, like SSE and Thames Water, who seem to have been missed out really by this exercise. Principle 5B, the route of the non-strategic Western Link road is unclear. Where should it cross the railway? Is it just the service road for South Manydown, which connects to Hounsome Fields Spur Road? Hampshire County Council questioned whether sufficient land had been allocated for public transport and the mass rapid transport system, and provided for segregated cycling and walking facilities on the A30. Certainly seeing the development there now, it's difficult to see it has. In the vision areas, is the vision area sustainable? The proposed roundabout access to the warehouse development would be 7,500 metres from the town centre, which compares with 9,000 to Hook. And Google suggests it takes 2 minutes longer to reach the centre of the vision area than it takes to get to Hook. Any new hospital and the warehouse provision should be considered in the local plan review, as I say. Development that could compromise Basingstoke's future should not be rushed. Maria Miller and developers consider that the development in the southwest of Basingstoke should be considered in the wider context of the town in the revised local plan, and I share that view. Okay.
Thank you, Julian. That was good to hear from you. Now, Paul Beavers. Paul, are you with us? Like some of the plants, you're a perennial. So,
can you hear me now?
We can. Thank you, Paul.
Thank you, Leader. Can I just precede my comments by saying to Councillor Raffel, I fully understand what he says about the vision, but it's still worthy of comment. So, ecological and nature recovery network thinking should be at the heart of the vision. But even after the consultation, national policy is still not recognised effectively, let alone mapped. Vision Principle 4C and D is no comfort when Map 4 is a representation of how poor a vision for nature is contemplated. By way of illustration, large spaces for development are mapped, but suppose networks for biodiversity, which should be expanded and integrated, are joined by string. The vision responses highlight an absence of comment from resource-constrained internal and external bodies and NGOs, but lots from well-resourced developers. What advice did the natural environment team provide, but what questions were they asked? Why is biodiversity inadequately represented, while Cabinet allocates most resources and priorities to development planning and rich developers have free rein? Let's talk evidence. There's more evidence on the ground in the vision area justifying the need to protect, expand and join habitats than for almost all other vision proposals. But that makes not a jot of difference. On the matter of a wildlife crossing, Council comes close to acknowledging flaws in the vision. Of course, there is a need for better analysis, but that should have been done. Suffice to say, nature and a wildlife crossing are not important enough. This vision is well intended and we support the vision principle, but it is flawed. It presages another car crash for nature. Unless Council adapts its development thinking and reliance on inadequate policy solutions, the decline in nature will only accelerate. Thank you.
Thank you, Paul. We now move to Councillor Andy Mccormick and his views on the adoption of the vision.
Thank you, Leader. Can you hear me?
Yes, and you've got 4 minutes, unlike our earlier.
Well, hopefully I won't need that, Leader. Craving all your indulgence. It's very good to hear the representations of residents tonight. It's testimony to the diligent research that they have done and the passion that they have for this subject. And I'm sure many of you on the Cabinet will share my passion and my concerns about the natural environment around Southwest Basingstoke. We tend to have quite high profile acclaim about the area of outstanding natural beauty to the north and west of the borough by Watership Down, but the area to the south and west is similarly deserving of our attention and our conservation. I know this is a revision of the November 2020 draft, but there have been some important changes, not least including all of the many down south proposals up to and including the railway footbridge at Worthing and as far east as the Roman Road, which marks the western boundary of Kempshire. So I've got 4 or 5 questions I want to ask relating to that. The first one is not in the plan, but is the Cabinet supportive in principle of a railway station at Worthing? There's also the possibility of a railway station at Oakley. There's an existing one on the Exeter line. Second question is the Cabinet supportive of a second household waste recycling centre at Peak Copse to cope with ever-growing demand in Basingstoke? The third one is if there is a new hospital, we need to make sure that all the existing services and facilities that we currently enjoy at Basingstoke are retained, and we don't have a new hospital that has a slightly different purpose, and we find that we have to go to Winchester for any of our treatments that we currently have in Basingstoke. I was just wondering if I can have the assurance of Cabinet that they will join me in voicing those concerns to the relevant health bodies, that we really do need to have a very comprehensive offer in Basingstoke. It's an expanding borough. The fourth question was really to do with the rather sad scenes of trees being ripped up at Hounsome Fields, which has caused considerable concern, remarks from various residents in various parts of the south and west of Basingstoke. What assurances do we have that we're going to protect the biodiversity of this area going forward? Because once this plan is put into action, once we start the development, it will be changed forever. So I do want to have some assurances that we will actually do what we say we're going to do with regards to preserving biodiversity. And the last one, am I right to conclude that there is no Western bypass proposal now, that's dead in the water? Thank you, Cabinet.
Councillor Feld, do you want to pick up on any of those points?
Yes, Leader.
Expand a little bit further on some of them.
Well, Leader, first of all, can I thank all those who've contributed, because they're shaping this vision by simply turning up and speaking. This, as I say, is a flexible document, and we've heard some very helpful comments tonight. I am interested, if I take them as a grouping, Andrew Ferguson and Stafford Napier's comments, supported by Julian Jones and Paul Beavers, about a wildlife crossing. How are we looking at all of that, and the movement of the Wayfarers Walk? How are we looking at all of that? I think it is important that I facilitate setting up a meeting to discuss with them what could be possible. I don't know what can be possible until we've had that discussion, but I think we should have that discussion with them, see what could be possible, see how far west they wish to move it, see whether it links into the strategic gap that is around North Waltham that we're very keen on supporting, and see if all of that works well with the site. and I'm very happy to engage with them on that topic and to find out more about the Wayfarers Walk going forward. As far as what Paul Beavers has said, I understand where he comes from. There's an underlining point which he has made on several occasions, which I'm working with and working for, which is that we haven't come from a position to where we've got to, not from where he would have suggested we come from. Unfortunately, my response has to be, well, we are where we are. And I can't go back in time by 11 years and say that we should have done the MPPF differently to get us to a different place. We are where we are, and we are picking up fast how we deal with matters. And I want to link to something that he has said to us. It's in the reports in the Hatchwarren Nature Group about designation of the area south of the M3, not actually in this vision area. He may have his views on that, but my priority is to ensure we get a hospital. There's going to be an element of compromise on this area, which I've stressed throughout. But to the south of the M3, I fully share his vision, as does Councillor McCormick, for designation of the area as an area of outstanding natural beauty. So progress is being made, and we will work together, hopefully, the other side of May, to bring some of these things to fruition. So I thank him for his contribution on that. Councillor McCormick raises some good points, and I think we should see if we can answer. Is the Cabinet supportive of a railway station? I couldn't quite guess where it is, and I wasn't quite sure where he's suggesting. In principle, if it stacks up as a viable option, it would be a wonderful idea to have a railway station that was to the west of Basingstoke, that supported the growth of many down north and south. There's been a lot of chatter about whether it's on the existing Oakley site or not on the Oakley site. That'll be a matter for the railway companies to sort out where it would go. And I'm keen to have meetings with Network Rail, if I have that opportunity other side of May, in order to facilitate that conversation. In terms of whether there should be a second household waste at Peak Copse, is not currently something that's being discussed as far as I'm aware. But if Councillor McCormick wants to push this further, I'm sure we could make further inquiries and see whether that would be something that would be sensible for that area. As far as the comments about the hospital, I think I understand his point. We want it to be the best hospital ever. We share that vision with him. And one that is all singing, all dancing, deals with critical treatment, as well as obviously the everyday needs of the residents of Basingstoke. I think that's his point, and if it is, I fully support that. He asked about moving forward and looking at and working out how we are going to continue to protect biodiversity moving forward. I see that this interaction with this area is going to be something that is going to be well observed. There are a number of groups that share our vision that the boundaries of this vision area, whenever they are firmly created, those boundaries are firmed up and protected, and that the wildlife beyond them is looked after. The council will have to look at nature recovery areas. It will have to look at designation of some parts in different standards and all sorts of other things moving forward, and valued landscapes and the rest. And I would, if I get that opportunity beyond May, be wishing to push that forward too. And as far as a western bypass is concerned, no, he's absolutely right. It is not reflected directly within this. What is reflected within this is Hampshire County Council talks about the need for north-south connections from the southern part of Manydown, no doubt connecting, but not going through Oakley, but round Oakley to the Worthing-Overton Road. Whilst those wider conversations are perhaps ongoing, it's clear this vision doesn't directly address those, because to some extent that is much more of a strategic issue. Albeit I'm sure we'll hear further about it in due course. Leader, that's all I want to say at the moment, but just thank everyone for their contributions. Yeah.
Thank you, Councillor Ruffell. Councillor Bound, you're our health spokesman. Do you want to say something on the hospital?
Yes, yeah, I think it's really important, isn't it, to pick up on what Councillor McCormick says, that Hampshire Together as a project run by the CCG and the Hospital Trust are doing much work to help everybody understand what services are delivered where. Very few people would understand that if you have the unfortunate case to have an ambulance called to you, that if you have a serious heart condition, you'll be brought to Basingstoke Hospital, and if it's a stroke, you'll be taken to Winchester Hospital. And absolutely all the work that we're doing with the Hampshire Hospitals Trust on the new hospital means that, you know, to develop those services, whether they be consultant-led maternity services, which would be an improvement in services in the new Basingstoke Hospital, or the improvement in cath lab services, which again would be an improvement in those specialist heart services in Basingstoke, are really what the protection of this site does. It brings amazing new improved regional hospital services rather than just services to our town. It allows the opportunity for research and development. It allows for all of the associated facilities to be there, whether they be ambulance stations, laboratories, all of those great things. And I think if I was to be bold, I think everything that I've heard through the Hampshire Together project tells me, although as the councillor who has the current hospital in their ward, and I would be sad to see it go, that Junction 7 is the best place for a regional hospital that serves everywhere from Fleet down to Eastleigh and Winchester and Test Valley. So very supportive of this vision.
Thank you. Cabinet colleagues, anything you'd like to add? Councillor Golding.
Thank you, Leader. I will be honest with my colleagues, and I don't think any of you will be surprised when I say that I do still wish our vision was to maintain the green fields that are there in my ward currently. However, I'm a realistic person, and development proposals and the potential for further ones are coming forward. And I think the hospital particularly does seem to offer important improvements for our residents, and therefore we must make sure that each of those proposals are considered in a context and not seen as individual applications through the planning process, when it's very clear to everyone here that each proposal is going to impact on the others and on existing residents in villages and in the town. I would like to highlight that some existing residents are excessively impacted by this vision, most notably the residents of Ganderdown Cottages, which, should this plan be realised, they will be completely surrounded by new development instead of fields. So I was very pleased to hear this evening that the portfolio holder has already stressed that this is a flexible document, because as work as on this vision involves, I would ask that he and officers do pay specific attention to the impact on those residents and how we can support them to be able to continue to live healthy and peaceful lives in the midst of some really quite significant changes. I would also have, echoing speakers that have already been on this evening, I would love to see a wildlife corridor and a relocated Wayfarers Walk investigated further, because they do sound like genuine assets to residents in local villages, but also to residents further afield who visit the area. Overall, I really am pleased with the changes that were made through consultation. I think they've made the vision stronger, and I think they present wider opportunities that could benefit residents in Basingstoke and further afield. But for me, I think the battle for joined up infrastructure isn't won through this vision. So I will be continuing to fight to represent local residents and make sure that the best decisions possible are made for this area, and that should any planning be granted, that the impact is minimised, and most importantly, every opportunity for retaining the natural environment that's currently there is taken. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Gould. Anything from the rest of Cabinet? If not, I'd just like to echo a few other things. I have to say, a station at Oakley fills me with some trepidation, if I'm honest. I wouldn't want it to become another Bramley, where the fact that they had a station meant that they get all of the development. I think that would be dangerous in Oakley, if I'm honest about that. I understand that it wouldn't be our decision anyway, but I would like to work with Network Rail and others to make sure I understood what they would be proposing if there are to be stations west of Basingstoke. To Councillor Bound's point and the hospital, I think we need to allow our hospital colleagues to ensure that the hospital, wherever it is clinically led. It provides for services for our residents that will provide excellence in all healthcare, and let's be honest, better outcomes for the patients that have to use those facilities. I think that should be our priority, that we have a health and well-being agenda woven into this vision that will allow people to walk and enjoy well-being assets such as the countryside, fresh air, a rejigged wayfarers walk, if that is possible, to ensure that whatever comes forward here is excellence in every shape, whether that be a hospital, the infrastructure, or just the natural environment which people can enjoy. So many things for us to think of, but as Councillor Ruffell said at the very beginning, this is a living document, something that is flexible, something that will change over time as priorities and pressures come upon us, and the input of all who are watching tonight, and many who will just see this as a document and then think, yes, I need to be involved. So I encourage everybody to involve themselves in our vision for the land at north of the M3 at Junction 7. And therefore, I move to the recommendation, which notes the comments made in the draft vision document and the proposed updates, and adopts the visions for the land north of the M3 at Junction 7 on the proviso it's a living document and one that can be adapted and changed over time. So, Cabinet, are you supportive of that position? You are? Thank you very much. I move now to item number 7 on our agenda, which is the Community and Voluntary Sector Grant Scheme. Councillor Bound, thank you for leaving the meeting. I'm going to get Councillor Hannah Golding to introduce it, and then we do have speakers both from the public and from the council. So, Councillor Golding.
Thank you, Leader. This scheme before us this evening does provide us with an excellent opportunity to support local organisations to deliver services and programmes that are important to our residents and take action on our council's priorities. Allocating programme grants this year was more challenging than previously because of the number of applications for the grant doubled to those on previous years, and therefore naturally made the process much more competitive. So a thorough process was followed to evaluate each proposal against the criteria that was set, which included this year, and most topically, a need to focus on recovery from the COVID pandemic. So I would like to take this opportunity to reassure any organisation that does not receive a grant this year that it doesn't mean that your contributions in the borough are not valued, but it was a competitive process, and also feedback is available for any applicant should they wish to receive it. But for those applications that were successful, I am truly pleased at the range of projects that are proposed for funding. They meet a wide variety of priorities across the borough, both rural and in town centre, and will meet the needs of many vulnerable or excluded groups across the borough. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that. I'd now like to call forward members of the public, Janai Chenan and Simata Patti. Are you with us? Sorry, it's taking a bit longer tonight to get our public on side with us, but I'm sure they're here. Good evening. You're on mute, I think, Mrs. Patti.
Oh, is it Chiranjani and Sushmita Patti?
Yes.
Yes, thank you. Good evening, everyone. So Kaladi Arts is a professional South Asian dance organization, and we have been in Basingstoke for 22 years. We are an arts charity, arts and education charity, and is in the Basingstoke cultural strategy. We have been known by the council, partners, artists, schools, communities for the high quality work we do. We develop and deliver for young people, hard to reach groups, and elderly people. Last year, we did everything online and reached a national and international audiences of about 6,000 people, and we have employed nearly 10 artists. Our finding from this commission allocation and arts and cultural budget is that theatre is well supported and all partners do such a good work, but dance is not funded. So we may be missing reaching ethnic communities and some South Asian communities for whom theatre have a cultural and language barrier. Dance is an art form that is accessible and is excellent for mental and physical well-being. We are happy to work with the portfolio holders and the officers to help address this issue in our borough and have active engagements using dance as an art form. We have been able to bring money to the borough last year from the Arts Council funding and Reading Borough commissioning, but due to a lack of local council funding and commissioning, we have been unable to engage locally or with partners to develop these intergenerational and cross-cultural projects. We are willing to do a presentation for the cabinet members and councillors and officers on colour at a later date digitally. We will also be providing more details on colour. Thank you.
Thank you. Mrs. Patty, do you want to say anything? You're mute, I think.
If you have any questions for us, we would be happy to answer.
Okay, I think what we'll probably do is we will come back to officers and just find out why your application was unsuccessful and be able to give you some feedback on that, maybe help you in the process going forward. Thank you for your attendance tonight. You're very welcome to listen to the rest of the debate on this item. I'd like to call forward now Councillor Kim Taylor.
Hello there, Leader. Are you hearing me loud and clear?
We are, thank you.
Thank you. I think there's just a slow internet today, haven't we, all round? Yeah. Thanks for this. I mean, I think it's really good to see how many organisations have applied for grant funding, and I guess it's not surprising that it's more than usual, given the year that we've had, and that there are many more groups that are going to be in need of additional support. So, you know, it's a shame we can't do them all in a way. I've got some general observations. In general, I think that in terms of the recommendation or suggested recommendation to provide funding below the requested amounts, I think that's a bit of a shame, really, and potentially a little bit short-sighted. I appreciate it means we can spread our money more thinly, but the difficulty is that a lot of organisations will not have been able to attract their normal funding or get their normal income that they might normally have expected in the past 12 months, which possibly is why there isn't a great deal of match funding either. And there is a real danger that if what is needed is not given, it simply won't occur, and then we're going to end up with money actually not being spent. We've got money that's not being used because the projects won't go ahead if the full amount isn't available. So I'm not sure that on a sort of general basis saying underfund these things is a sensible move, to be honest with you. Turning now perhaps to, you know, one of the bigger and more controversial things in the paper really is about the really very significant and substantial suggested cut to the Anvil Trust. And the way the paper reads, it makes an assumption that the brunt of that is got to be borne by the Haymarket. And I notice as well that the lease is up in 2022 for that, the building lease, according to the papers. I think it's really one of those decisions that we could make, that we make in haste and will repent very much at leisure. We know that retail has been significantly hit through this pandemic, and we know that we're going to have to do we're going to have a map on retail, aren't we? We're going to consider how we breathe new life into retail in Basingstoke, into the old part of the top of town. And it just seems to me to be really ironic if we make a decision at this point to cut this vast amount of funding, which could basically see the Haymarket close. And there's a lot of huge community work that they do, and that, you know, a little while down the line we're going to end up with a recommendation after a review of retail that one of the ways of actually enlivening our top of town and our town centre is to have more leisure in it. There we are, possibly contributing to the closure of the Haymarket. If the Haymarket is put in danger, it won't just be, you know, pantomimes that won't be taking place there. It will be all number of other community work that they do, working with a whole range of community groups. And I think that the Haymarket does bring in a lot of footfall to the town and to the town centre. And I think there is sort of evidence that suggests that for every £1 of public money being spent, £6 of other money is being spent in that location. And I just worry that this is actually going to be doing more damage to our town centre and to the top of town in particular. And I am particularly interested to understand and know what our plans are for the building when this lease is up in 2022, if it's not going to be a theatre. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Taylor. Quickly, I mean, the reality is that the Anvil Trust will decide on the way forward, and they have received large amounts of money. Now, hopefully, with the announcement in the budget last week that arts will receive additional funding, they will put their shoulder to the wheel and get additional funding from that money from central government. I have to say that it's a difficult experience cutting any grant, whether that be large or small, to an organisation, but there has to be parameters on which we rightly look at and review all of our grant funding. And I think the Anvil Trust, in their own way, have not done as well as they could for themselves. The business plan that they submitted was not fit for purpose, and that was their own words on that. But look, we will find them a way forward with a smaller grant, and they will need to adapt. I think they will adapt, as many organisations will have to post-COVID. And of course, although they may be opening up again in May, social distancing will not disappear, and many of the people who are their audiences will still feel a little bit of trepidation heading to big venues for arts, music, culture. So it's a difficult call, but you can be sure that we will ensure that the buildings remain, because they're the most important thing, and we take your point on board. I'd like to move to Councillor Isaac. You have a view on our property portfolio. Would you like to say anything on this?
Yes, good evening, Leader. Well, I think you summarised the position very well, and this remains with the Anvil Trust. There's a considerable amount of funding still coming from the borough, but I suppose I'm more optimistic than Councillor Taylor. Talking to a lot of people in the arts world, a lot of them are very enthusiastic about the opportunities that might be available to them if they were given more of a chance to operate at the Haymarket. So I think that I agree with Councillor Taylor that in the future, in terms of the town centre, the Haymarket has a big role to play. But I'm interested to know who might be taking the lead in regard to making the most of that very lovely building in the centre of the town.
Good. Councillor Golding, do you want to say anything on the provision of grants, not particularly the Anvil perhaps, but anything else? Feedback for the people who are unsuccessful. How will you propose to make sure that they get the right feedback and are are more ready to receive grants should they need them in the future, and maybe next time we are dispersing grants to be more successful.
Absolutely. So feedback should already have been made available to everyone. They should have had an email explaining the outcome of their grant application and an offer to take up feedback already. If anybody hasn't, then obviously I'm quite happy for them to contact me, and I'll make sure that gets passed on to the relevant officers. It was a difficult process. I think there were some organisations where you're like, oh, I really wish you'd written a better application, because we want to support you, but we have to set out frameworks, and we have to make sure that the money is being spent for the best possible impact for the residents of Basingstoke and Deane. And I think the proposals before us will have a great impact for COVID recovery, but also for getting people more involved in sports and arts and everything. I wanted to note Councillor Taylor's concerns about encouraging people to do match funding. I think it's quite important to note that where organisations are match funding, they are naturally more financially resilient, and that is something that we should be encouraging in our local organisations. They shouldn't just be looking for money from us, and there are a whole range of support services out there which our officers have previously kind of pointed them to. Obviously, BVA would also be able to work with local organisations, I imagine, to get other grants.
Thank you for that. Cabinet colleagues, anything more that you'd like to add? No, I just I echo Councillor Golding's point that organisations need to be more resilient. I think COVID has proved that having reserves is important if you want to continue to enact your service, your arts, or whatever it is within the borough. You need to have that resilience, and it is a lesson to us all. We have been fortunate as a borough council that we've had some resilience in our reserves ourselves. So it is good financial management, and I encourage that on all of the organisations that have come to us for funding. Obviously, I'm disappointed that the Fieldgate in Kingsclear did not receive any money, but I'm sure that there will be other opportunities for them alone to come forward, but those and many others will be knocking on our door in the future. So I look forward to being able to fund many more things in the future as our financial resilience increases and our economic recovery for the borough improves, and that will allow us to fund many more projects and many more organisations. So I move you now to the recommendation, which is on page 138. It is to award each of the recommended programme grants as set out in Appendix 2, subject to the usual grant terms and conditions. To approve the extension of a further year of all strategic grants, with the exception of the Anvil Trust. To give 90 days notice of the Council's intention to reduce its grant to the Anvil Trust in accordance with the agreement between the parties dated the 10th of May 2017. To delegate authority to the Cabinet Member for Communities, Culture and Partnerships in consultation with the Cabinet Member for Finance and Service Improvement and the Executive Director of Corporate Services Authority to determine the level of grant awarded in 2021 and 22, subject to the evaluation of the Trust's revised business plan. If, by the time the Cabinet meeting, the Council has not gained full assurance from the business plan, to delegate the Executive Director of Borough Development in consultation with the Executive Director of Corporate Services, agreement of a satisfactory business plan before the allocation of further funding in this financial year. Are we agreed with that recommendation, Cabinet? Thank you for your time on that. I move now to item number 8, and back in the frame for this is Councillor Golding. I'll get you to introduce it. We have no speakers on this, but if you'd like to introduce it, and then we might very quickly run through the recommendations.
Thank you, Leader. As with previous capital monitoring reports over the current financial year, delivery of key projects within our capital programme have been delayed because of logistical issues largely linked to COVID-19. However, this does not in any way negate our determination or commitment to improve facilities in the borough. We have some excellent schemes coming forward in our capital programme, from changes to the War Memorial Skate Park, more electric vehicle charging points, cricket ground improvements, athletic track upgrade at Downgrange, and a continued commitment to providing disabled facilities grants. It is really important that these get delivered, and I look forward to presenting further updates, which will be a bit more positive in terms of our delivery to these, and also the impact that that is having on our local communities.
Thank you for that. Cabinet colleagues, do you wish to add to Councillor Golding's comments? Otherwise, I'll move to the recommendation, and I won't read it out in full. It's only a recommendation to note, and I would direct you to page 176 of your agenda. If we are agreed with the 8 points as detailed, I just need your nod or thumbs up to confirm that note of recommendation. Are we agreed? Then thank you very much for that. I move rapidly on to Hannah Golding again. Thank you for this. This is the third quarter revenue monitoring report and COVID financial impact update. Councillor Golding.
Thank you, Leader. This report sets out the 2020-2021 revenue forecast outturn as at 31st of December 2020, takes into account the impact of COVID-19 and the rebasing of the budget approved by Council in October 2020, not our most recent Council meeting. Unfortunately, with the resurgence of the virus late last year, it led to further periods of lockdown and obviously then has presented further ongoing financial pressures and risks to the revenue budget. However, I am pleased to say that the actions that have been put in place over the last financial year are so far being effective in supporting our financial position. The current forecast actually provides a positive variance to our rebase budget, which is principally due to the later introduction of the government's income compensation scheme, which wasn't in place when we rebased our budget. Any further impact of ongoing lockdown and how we're being released from that, and what might follow for the remaining quarter of the year is still uncertain. Therefore, it's very important that measures are put in place and focus on monitoring is maintained, and I will be undertaking this alongside officers. The careful management of council budget and spending alongside the additional COVID-19 funding support from the government has also provided us with the opportunity to allocate further funding to support two vital priorities of the council. That's the Climate Change Reserve and also the Economic Recovery Programme. And therefore, this report, alongside many other recommendations, seeks specific approval to allocate funds to support these priorities.
Thank you very much. Cabinet, any questions to the portfolio holder? No, then I'd just like to add my thanks to that of many people who have thanked our 151 officer for all of her work in ensuring that we are as robust as we are in terms of our finances. It's a remarkable piece of work with you and your team and your portfolio holder, and I in public would like to thank you and everybody who works with you for the outcomes of a very difficult financial year. I move now to the recommendation. I'm not going to read out the cabinet notes, which is 1 to 8 on page 197, but I am going to read out, because this is going to council for approval, 9 to 12. So if you could bear with me. The cabinet requests council approve a contribution to the Mannydown Housing Reserve of 0.42 million to be released in 21-22 and future years to provide provision for further activities that may be required in bringing the land into use at Mannydown South, any activities in relation to Junction 7, and to support activities in relation to the new hospital provision. To transfer 0.54 million back into the MTFS risk reserve for 2021 to be utilised in 21-22 in relation to the slippage on the Mannydown capacity funding activity as detailed in paragraphs 5.56 to 5.58. A contribution to the Climate Change Reserve of £1 million to be released in 21-22 and future years to provide further provision for the funding to support the climate change agenda. And the creation of an economic recovery reserve of £1 million to be released in 21-22 and future years to support the economic recovery framework. Action plan approval is also sought to delegate authority to the Executive Director of Borough Development in consultation with the Executive Director of Corporate Services, the 151 officer and leader of the council, the portfolio holder, to agree the Economic Recovery Fund spending plan. That will go to council in a week's time. Are we agreed with both the noting of the 1 to 8 and of course the approval to go to council next week? Are we agreed with that? Thank you very much. We will now then move to public conveniences in rural wards, and I'd like to pass this on to Councillor Hayley Eachus, who is in the first flush of youth herself. So I move toilets with you.
Thank you, Leader. Yes, this paper is in relation to the public conveniences in St Marybourne, Overton and Whitchurch and Kingsclere, and it seeks to transfer the toilet facilities in those wards to the parish or town councils if they so choose to take them over, and to decommission the relevant toilet facility in the event that the relevant parish or town council declines the transfer. The reason for this is in our 2019 resident survey, almost half of our residents said that public toilets were among the 3 least important services we provide to them. Usage of the facilities are low, but we do fully understand that toilets may be a facility of local value. And I would just like to reassure everybody that the officers have worked extremely hard in working very closely with all of those parish councils. There's been some really good dialogue in relation to that. I know that the parish councils can't make any decisions as to whether they take these facilities over or whether they allow us to decommission them without them having condition surveys, which are being carried out at the moment by our property team and should be ready very soon. And again, all the parish councils are being kept up to date in that regard. I think one of the officers were in touch with most of them even yesterday. As soon as that comes out, we will let you know. So it's also just to reassure you as well that the time limits of this report were based on having those condition surveys already, and that the handovers or the decommission would take place on the 1st of April. Because we haven't got those condition surveys yet, I appreciate that even if we were to get them, say, next week, that isn't enough time for the parish councils to digest them, consider their position and discuss that with officers and possibly their local ward members. So this will run over and we're well aware of that. And I'd just like to reassure those parish councils we're not going to rush them in that regard, and probably accept they're going to need 6 to 8 weeks to consider the surveys when they come out. So on that basis, the recommendation is on page 231. That is to delegate authority to the head of property and assets in consultation with the head of law and governance to transfer the toilet facilities St Marybourne, Overton, Whitchurch and Kingsclere to the relevant parish or town councils. But as I say, if they don't want to take them over, to decommission the relevant toilet facilities in the event that this relevant parish or town council declines the transfer. And we'll continue to work with those parish councils on this issue until a final decision is made.
Thank you very much for that. Councillor Isaac, do you want to say anything, or shall I just talk about Kingsclere, as I've got a view on that?
Yeah, well, I'm very keen to, actually, Leader.
Okay.
Yes.
Over to you.
I'm a reluctant supporter of this, I have to say. It's come about because of the financial pressures on us as a council, and therefore I accept that we have had to make savings, and this is one of the unfortunate savings that we have to make. But you know, I accept that for residents generally across the borough, public toilets in villages and so forth are not particularly high on their agenda. But for people who live in the villages, like St Marybourne, and the towns like Whitchurch and Overton, they are important facilities, not so much for the local residents, but all the people visiting the villages and using their pubs and cafes and village stores and so forth. So I do hope that after the condition surveys have been received and considered, that we will find a way of being able to preserve what I think are important facilities in these villages, because that they are an immediacy that helps with the general well-being and economic vitality of these communities. So I'll be doing my best to see them maintained, and I'm sure that the villages being and towns being as capable as they are, they will run them very well indeed. So that's I've said my piece now, Leader.
Thank you, Councillor Isaac. Anything else from Cabinet before I weigh in on Kingsclear? Well, I have to say I'm very supportive of this. The need for local management of public conveniences is really important. It will allow people to open it through the weekends, which are not available at Kingsclear at the moment. Will allow people who cycle, which quite often happens in Kingsclear as they get up White Hill up towards Whitchurch and Overton. So I'm delighted that we will have a facility that could be open more widely, more used, and will probably be much better kept if we're honest. Although I'm sure our operatives do a great job, we know that the pride of individuals in their own towns and villages is much greater, and therefore I'm supportive of this. I do not believe this has happened because of financial pressures, if I'm honest, Councillor Isaac. I believe it's happened because this is the right thing to do, is to give local communities the right to look after their own facilities. And it is important, as Councillor Each has pointed out, that the condition survey is properly done. We make sure that if there is any outstanding items that need to be sorted within them, they're done, and that we hand them over in the best condition possible to the new parishes to make sure that or town councils to make sure that they are used properly. But I think it's a great opportunity to make sure there used to be awards for the quality of public toilets. I hope that the 4 of them fight out for the best toilets in a rural area at some time in the future. So look, it's great. Councillor Eachus has pointed out what is recommended for our approval. I hope that you will all be supportive of this, even if it is reluctantly, Councillor Isaac, but are we agreed that this moves on? Great, then we look forward to the surveys and the interaction with the town and village parish councils to make sure that they get the facilities handed over in the best way possible. I'd like to move to item 11 now, which is the additional restrictions grant. It's the business support activity. This is an important piece of how we have been able to support businesses through the worst of the COVID world. It has meant that we have churned out millions and millions of pounds of support to the most vulnerable of our businesses. We have been able to help them at a time where perhaps they weren't able to get help themselves through their business or that resilience I've talked about. And I have to say that once again, I'm thankful for our finance team and the work that they've done to make sure that the AIRG has been paid out. Pay tribute to my cabinet colleague, Councillor Golding, for her efforts, and that of officers to make sure that this support activity is in line with the best in the country. I have been informed today that the The budget has put forward some suggestions from last week that ARG is, as we currently have it, is to be spent quickly because there is additional money coming. That is good news, I think, that there will be additional support, and that, you know, we either carry on doing what we're doing, or we increase the parameters, increase the amount, or maybe link it to the restart money that government have also added in. There are three programs. I think you can all see from the paperwork how important this is. But businesses are going to need our help and support, not just financially, but that of a critical friend when they ask what they can do, what they can achieve, to make sure that the roadmap out of lockdown is both transparent to them and that they hit the ground running, especially our hospitality businesses that have suffered hugely in this pandemic. You know, I know individuals who've not had weddings that they would have wanted. I am aware that pubs have not had the benefit of cabinet members attending them, and that the serious matter of them getting back to doing their business is important. And therefore, I hope that you will approve the recommendations for the use of the business grant on the 3 business support programs that we've outlaid within the papers. Councillor Golding, do you want to say anything more on what we've done and how we've done it?
No, thank you, Leader, not specifically. Just to echo thanks for the team who really have been working flat out. I think the government have done a great job at trying to support all people in the country, but that has meant that it feels like sometimes they're rolling out new grants for us to administer every week. That's not without its challenges, but it's absolutely worthwhile work to make sure that our local businesses and residents can thrive, even in very difficult circumstances. So I would like to thank the team for all they've done, especially as so often we've been one of the first boroughs to be rolling that out and making sure our residents get the support they need as quickly as they possibly can.
Great. Well, we help in their resilience. So the recommendation is to approve the recommendations within this for the use of the ARG on 3 business support programs. I hope you've all noted them, and to be aware that things may have to be spent more rapidly as the government are trying to push forward the money getting to businesses to support them in that recovery as we move out of lockdown. So are we happy with the recommendation as laid out? We are. Thank you very much. We will move now to 12, which is our advertising policy. And if I, in this huge pile of papers, you just give me a moment to get it. Councillor Golding, do you want to? I got it here. Councillor Golding, do you want to say
a very quick intro?
You do a quick introduction, and then we have a speaker on tonight's agenda.
We do, and she very kindly gave me advance notice of her question as well.
We're grateful for that.
Update to this policy is very welcome. It was last updated in 2011, so it's a good time for a review now. It's a fairly simple update, to be honest. It brings it in line with current good practice and ensures that it meets the advertising needs of the council today. It gives us a solid framework for how we can consider advertising in the borough's remit, and ensure that it aligns it with the Advertising Standards Agency, the Local Government Publicity Code, and to the Financial Services Authority. But probably most importantly, it also enables us to align it to the council's priority, and we can take a flexible approach with the advertisements that we support or don't support, which I think will be key in Mrs. Peacock's question. So I will leave it there for now.
Thank you very much. Sheila Peacock, are you on the call with us?
Yes, I am. Oh, my camera is not pointing at me. Yes. Yes. Hello, this is Sheila Peacock. Thank you very much for listening to my question. I'm very pleased that the updated advertising policy includes a clause stating that an advertisement will not be accepted if, in the council's opinion, it could promote goods or services that contradict the climate change and air quality strategy. And I just wanted to confirm, could the Cabinet confirm that the exclusion would include promoting the extravagant use of fossil fuels, for instance, in advertising urban SUVs, Chelsea tractors, and unnecessary flying. I'm also pleased that the new policy specifically excludes gambling. I'm concerned that some clauses of the 2011 version have been watered down, and that the current version will permit the advertising of weapons and sex shops, which the council specifically, I want to know, would the council exclude these items either by restoring the specific clauses that were excluding them from the 2011 version, or confirming strongly that they are excluded within the exclusions that are listed on the page 257 of the document that is in front of you just now. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Sheila. As always, we're grateful for your interaction with us as a council. I am, I have to say that advertising has to be discreet. It has to be the right sort of thing that's advertised. Now, air travel is an important thing for many people, and I think many, if we're honest, would be looking forward to a foreign holiday at some point in the not too distant future. So although we will not advertise perhaps private air flight, I think there is a space for holidays. I think it is right that we see the world and allow our children to see the world too. But I think it is important that we are aware of what we announced 18 months ago as our climate change emergency, and we will take note of that on everything that we do, and it will be interwoven into this advertising policy. It is important that we understand the air quality, whether that's for motors, but many motors now are hybrid or electric vehicles. And I think there is an opportunity for us to maximise benefit for us as a borough in terms of income, but also to be a showcase for many businesses within our borough. Bombay Sapphire, for example, they are someone who, although it's alcohol, it is a thriving business and a thriving tourist attraction for many who come from outside the borough. So I think we'll always look at who advertises with us and what they're advertising. But I think this update is a welcome addition, and I, of course, support and approve it. Councillor Golding.
Thank you, Leader. That was a very helpful response. I've just got a few more details that hopefully will help answer the question as well. I really welcome it. I think it's good to be challenged on important issues like this. The point made about climate change and encouraging people to reduce their carbon footprint, as you've already said, is impertinent at the time when we're adopting our climate change and air quality strategy. It absolutely is an important issue for us, and we're in the process of embedding climate change considerations into all of our relevant strategies and policies. And because we do need to take ambitious steps at this stage to meet our targets. And the advertising policy does mean that we can assess individual advertisers' messages and make sure that they are aligned to council priorities, which do include tackling climate change. For your point specifically about weapons and other community safety issues, it wouldn't fit within our council priority of protecting communities and keeping people safe, but I think key, and I think one of the updates I actually quite like in this strategy, it's included the criteria that it can't be inappropriate for children. So I hope that's reassuring. I certainly wouldn't feel either of the concerns you raised would be considered appropriate for children, and therefore I'm quite content that they are would not be approved by this policy. And actually I think it probably makes it slightly stronger by broadening it out rather than just naming the specific issues. But just to finish, I would like to reassure Sheila Peacock that climate change is one of our key priorities, as is keeping people safe and protected, and we will focus on the impact of any messages against those priorities before accepting any advertising.
Thank you, Councillor Golding. Cabinet, anyone else like to add to this? Otherwise, I will recommend the approval of the proposed advertising policy. Okay, are we in agreement that to approve this tonight as recommended to us? Yes. Thank you very much for that, Cabinet. That takes us through the agenda items. There was no confidential or exempt items for tonight's agenda, and therefore I'd like to conclude tonight's meeting. I'd like to thank you for your attendance and for your input, especially Councillor Golding, who got most of the papers today. So I'm grateful for that. And to you, Councillor Raffel, for your vision, which I thought was very well received, and obviously is as you rightly said, is a flexible document that will change over time. So a good night's work, I feel,